My name is Angela, and I'm 27 years old. I work in a creative job at a software company in New York. From the outside, my life might seem easy and well-planned, like I have everything under control. But if you look closer, things at home are actually very messy. About a year ago, everything changed for my family. My dad's business suddenly went bankrupt. It was a complete shock, and we weren't ready for it. Since then, I had to move back to my hometown to live with my parents and my younger sister, Lauren. Now, my job is the main way my family gets money, so I pay for most of our expenses. One evening, we were all sitting in the living room when my mom brought up dinner. Angela says she wants pork steaks for dinner tomorrow, she said, looking at me. I sighed and replied, "We're really running out of money for groceries. We can't even afford to buy pork right now. Can you help a bit more with the food budget?" I frowned, feeling the stress of our situation. It wasn't even the middle of the month, and we were already out of money for food. That's when Lauren spoke up, sounding annoyed. "Big sis, you're not giving enough money for food," she said, crossing her arms. I was shocked. I stared at her, not believing what I just heard. "What do you mean?" I asked, feeling defensive. "I already give $8,000 a month. That should be more than enough for all of us." Lauren just scoffed. "Big sis, prices are higher now. $8,000 isn't enough for a family of 5 anymore." I felt anger rising in me. I couldn't hold it in any longer.
Fine.
"I'll give $11,000. But if you have a problem with that, why don't you get a job and help pay for the food yourselves?" I snapped. Right away, my mom jumped in, taking Lauren's side. "It's hard to find a job," she said, sounding sorry for Lauren. Hearing that made me feel bitter. I knew Lauren wasn't really looking for a job. She just said she was so she wouldn't have to work. The truth was, she spent most of her time at home doing nothing useful. On top of that, I had recently found out that my mom was secretly giving Lauren some of the money I provided as pocket money. I couldn't take it anymore. "Enough," I said firmly. "If things are really so hard here, why don't we sell this house and move back to Grandma's hometown? Maybe we could find jobs there and life wouldn't be so difficult." But Mom immediately rejected the idea. "No way," she said, shaking her head. "I'm not going back to that town. My grandma lives in New York and owns a popular Italian restaurant. If we moved there, we could work at her restaurant and at least have free pizza and pasta to eat. It would make things easier for us. But Grandma is very strict, especially about how she makes her pizza, and my mom hates that. She doesn't want to deal with the hard work that comes with working in Grandma's restaurant." Even my dad spoke up. "Why are we so quick to run to Grandma for help? We should take care of ourselves. Relying on her is just being spoiled," he said. I felt anger building inside me. How could they call me spoiled? I was the one working hard and paying for almost everything. Meanwhile, my sister didn't even want to work, but my parents still always took her side. I suggested that Lauren could at least try getting a part-time job while looking for something permanent. She's 25, and lots of people work part-time to support themselves. But my mom quickly shut me down. "No," she argued. "Lauren helps around the house, so she doesn't have time for a job." I was confused. "What are you talking about?" I asked, completely shocked. "I've never seen Lauren do any housework." Then my dad spoke up, trying to defend her. "Lauren carries the dishes to the sink after meals. She does her own laundry. And sometimes, she even gives me shoulder massages." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The housework they talked about was stuff even a little kid could do. Meanwhile, I was the one waking up early every morning to make breakfast for the whole family. I also packed my dad's lunch before going to work. On top of that, I managed all the household finances and took care of our taxes. But no matter how much I did, my parents still treated Lauren better. This wasn't new. They had always favored her, even when we were kids. People often said I was pretty too, but Lauren was always seen as more graceful and charming. Because of that, our parents always treated her a little more special. I thought about moving out and leaving everything behind, but it wasn't that simple. I couldn't just walk away. There were too many reasons why I had to stay, at least for now. So, every day, I kept living with this stress, feeling like I was carrying my entire family on my shoulders. One day, I realized Lauren had been gone for a while. At first, I thought she had just gone out like usual, but then a few days passed and she still hadn't come back. I started to feel suspicious, wondering where she could be. Then, one evening, as I was coming home and walking to my room, I overheard my parents talking in the living room. Their voices were low, but I caught enough to make me stop and listen. What I heard left me completely shocked. "I can't wait to see the souvenirs from Hawaii," my mom said, sounding excited. "Lauren is so lucky, enjoying a relaxing trip, spending time on beautiful beaches, and eating at fancy restaurants. I'd love to go to Hawaii too," she added with a little envy. "Maybe we should all plan a trip together next time." My dad nodded. "That would be nice," he agreed. I couldn't stay quiet any longer. Confused, I asked, "Wait, what are you talking about? Are you saying Lauren is in Hawaii right now?" My parents looked at me, surprised by my reaction. "Yes, that's right," they both replied. I was shocked. "But how?" I asked. "She doesn't have any money. I've even been cutting back on my own shopping just to save." "Oh, Lauren won a trip in a sweepstakes," my mom explained with a smile. "She's always been lucky with things like that." I was surprised but decided to let it go. If Lauren had won a free trip, that made sense. So I tried to accept it. The next day, while I was at work, I got an unexpected call from a credit card company. Since I hardly used my credit card, I wasn't too worried, just curious. But when the company told me there had been large charges on my card over the past 5 days, I was shocked. I couldn't remember spending any big amounts recently. Feeling nervous, I asked, "How much was spent?" The customer service agent replied, "About $185,000 has been charged in the past 5 days. Right away, I had a strong feeling about who was behind it. It had to be Lauren. Maybe she had won a free trip for the hotel and flight, but she still needed money for everything else, souvenirs, meals, and other expenses. Determined to find out the truth, I called her immediately. "What's going on, Lauren? Explain yourself." I demanded an answer, my voice firm. "Oh, I'm surprised you called, sis. I thought you'd be waiting for your souvenirs," Lauren joked. "Stop messing around." I snapped. "You've been using my credit card without asking, haven't you?" Lauren didn't even sound guilty. "Oh, you noticed? It was an accident," she said casually. I felt my anger growing. "What were you thinking?" I asked, barely holding back my frustration. "Using someone else's credit card without permission is serious." Lauren just laughed. "It might be a problem if it was a stranger's card, but we're family, Angela. You really need to understand how families work," she said, acting like it was no big deal. "How could you spend $185,000 in just 5 days? That's crazy." I nearly shouted. "Well," she said like it was obvious, "the flight and hotel were free, but I had to pay for everything else, shopping, fancy meals, and fun activities. I went to some nice restaurants, bought a few branded items, and even took taxis everywhere. Before I knew it, I'd spent over $185,000. Spending that much money is not okay, Lauren. What were you thinking?" I asked angrily. "Why are you so mad?" she replied, almost amused. "I used the card because it was going to expire soon, that's all. Relax, sis. I'll leave the bill to you." Then, without waiting for my response, she hung up, still sounding cheerful. I stood there, speechless, trying to process what had just happened. After that call, Lauren tried to reach me several times, but I ignored her. She even left a voicemail saying, "I guess I really messed up this time." I was being so foolish. Her tone was so casual that it made me laugh bitterly. She didn't seem to understand how serious this was. Later that evening, when I got home, my parents greeted me warmly. "Welcome back," they said like everything was normal. "How can you act so calm?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Lauren is in a tough spot," my mom said, sounding worried. "Why did you stop the card?" my dad asked. "Why?" I repeated, completely shocked. "Because she used my card without my permission. As soon as the credit card company called me about the charges, I canceled it right away. Apparently, Lauren had tried to use the card again after it was blocked. When it didn't work, she panicked. Frustrated, she kept calling me, but since I ignored her, she went to my parents for help. "Your sister is in trouble, stuck in another state, and you're not going to help her?" my mom asked, sounding disappointed. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you serious?" I asked. "Just because we're family, does that make it okay to use someone else's credit card and spend $185,000? My mom shook her head, clearly disagreeing. "I don't think you should be so heartless," she said, looking at me with disappointment. "How can you be so cold? This is why you never get to go on trips. Lauren even planned to buy us all souvenirs, so what's the big deal?" I was stunned. Once again, they were taking Lauren's side, even though she was clearly wrong. I couldn't believe my own family thought it was normal to take someone's money without permission. "You two are unbelievable," I said, feeling frustrated. "How can you even think this way? Are you sleep-talking during the day? You're not seeing things clearly at all. Lauren is out there enjoying herself without a single worry, and you still expect me to be understanding." I pulled out my phone and played the voicemail my sister had left. Lauren's voice came through loud and clear. "Make the card usable again, you miser. Mom and Dad's cards are maxed out, and I can't use them. You're so cheap, not even giving me pocket money for this trip. How useless can they be?" After hearing Lauren's angry message, my parents went silent. The anger they had toward me quickly disappeared, replaced by shock. They rushed to their room to check their credit cards. A few minutes later, I heard them shouting in panic. Curious, I went to check on them. Their faces were red with frustration and disbelief. "I can't believe Lauren used my card without asking," my dad muttered, furious. "After everything we've done for her, this is how she repays us? She even took the bank book and all our cards," my mom added, looking hurt. "I feel so betrayed." "Oh," I replied coldly. "Wasn't she just being thoughtful? Didn't you say she was buying souvenirs for you and having fun for your sake?" My parents looked down, realizing how wrong they had been. "Yeah, that's what we thought," my mom mumbled, now unsure. "But our money is still safe, right?" When I saw how quickly their attitude changed once they were sure their money wasn't gone, I felt disappointed. "Well then," I said, raising an eyebrow, "why don't you just increase the credit card limit and pay off the balance? Let Lauren keep using it for all the souvenirs she's planning to buy you." "That's not possible," my mom replied, shaking her head sadly. "We don't have any savings left. What are we going to do? Lauren is stuck out there with no money for food or anything." After a moment of silence, my dad turned to me with a pleading look. "Angela, please," he said, his voice soft and desperate. "We'll start fresh. We promise to work together to support this family. Please help Lauren," my dad begged. I let out a bitter smile and asked sarcastically, "Help her? What are you talking about? Does that include actually supporting me too?" Moved by my dad's words, my mom suddenly knelt down in front of me, her face full of regret. For a moment, I was shocked. But then, I just felt disbelief and bitterness. I let out a dry laugh. "Isn't it a little late for apologies now?" I asked. But my mom kept pleading, her voice filled with sincerity. "I swear I will change. I'll do my best to support everyone from now on. I won't treat you or Lauren unfairly ever again." Despite everything that had happened, I couldn't stop laughing at how ridiculous the situation was. After my parents went back to their room, I took out my credit card and stared at it, still unsure what to do next. A few days later, I came across a credit card with a valid expiration date that hadn't been used yet. I turned to my parents and said, "Why don't you give this card to Lauren? And why not take a family trip to Hawaii together? You'll all have a great time." My parents were thrilled with the idea. They immediately called Lauren, and everyone started making plans for the trip. I even booked their flights online, watching as they excitedly talked about their upcoming vacation. I smiled to myself, keeping my true intentions hidden. After everything was set, I made a private call to a certain number. 7 days later, when my parents and Lauren returned from their trip, Lauren greeted me with a big smile. "Big sis, thank you so much for letting us enjoy Hawaii. It's rare for you to come and pick us up." Were you expecting some souvenirs? Sorry, I didn't buy anything. It was obvious they had an amazing time. They looked completely happy and relaxed, showing no real gratitude for my help. Seeing their carefree attitude, I knew it was time to put my plan into action. I could barely hold back my excitement. Looks like you all had a lot of fun, I said casually. Was that the last big moment of your life? Lauren frowned, confused. What do you mean by last? Well, I said with a smirk, I've decided to sell the house. It's all settled. I've already sent our belongings to a new place, and someone's coming to pick us up soon. My parents and Lauren stared at me in complete shock. Then, they noticed the for sale sign at the entrance of our home and realized I wasn't joking. What is this? Did you really sell the house? They demanded, their faces pale with disbelief. Facing their stunned expressions, I continued calmly, actually, a real estate agent has already. I had a friend from university who had been interested in buying this house and the land for a long time. Every time they asked, I always said no because I thought it was best to keep the house in the family. But recently, I changed my mind. I realized that selling the house and living on my own would finally give me the freedom I needed, both financially and mentally. My parents were furious. You can't just sell the house on your own. That's illegal, my mom protested. This house belongs to your dad, not you. I stayed calm and replied, Oh, I see you're upset. But what if I told you the house and land are actually in my names? They both stared at me in shock. What? How is that possible? They exclaimed. I folded my arms and explained. Dad, do you remember a few years ago when you couldn't pay the taxes and came to me for help? He hesitated. I agreed to pay them, but only under one condition, that the house's ownership be transferred to my name. You signed the papers back then, remember? My dad's face fell as he realized the truth. Ah, that's right, he muttered. I continued, I never left this house all this time because it was already mine. I was just waiting for the right moment to move you all out, so I could sell it. It was hard to find the right time since you were always around. But while you were in Hawaii, I finally had my chance. Everyone gasped, finally understanding what I had done. As I mentioned earlier, I went on calmly, your luggage has already been sent to your new home. You don't have to worry, a pickup will be here soon to take you there. Pickup? What do you mean? My mom asked, still looking confused. I smiled. Grandma is waiting for you all. She's really excited to see you. Wait, Grandma? You mean my mom? My dad asked, his voice shaking a little. Yes, I confirmed. I talked to her, and she agreed to take you all in. She even told me to send your luggage ahead. I smirked. Get ready because you'll be making pizzas and cleaning up at Grandma's restaurant every day. My parents and Lauren looked horrified. We can't go to Grandma's. We don't want to. Lauren cried. Oh, really? I raised an eyebrow. Well, you can do whatever you want. But without a house or jobs, how do you plan to survive? And don't forget about that massive credit card bill. My mom's face turned pale. What do you mean? She asked nervously. I smirked. You thought the credit card was in my name? I watched my mom closely and said, You really should have checked whose name was on the card. No way. My mom whispered, her face turning even paler. She quickly pulled out the card and looked at the name on it. Her eyes widened in shock. Wait, this card is in Lauren's name. Exactly, I replied calmly. The credit card I gave you was one I found in Lauren's room. It was the first card she got when she started her first job. But since she quit soon after, she never actually used it. Lauren gasped as she realized what this meant. What? I spent way too much. What am I supposed to do now? She cried, panicking. I shrugged. Well, since the card is in your name, you have no choice but to pay it off. And all of you will have to work hard at Grandma's restaurant to cover your stay without causing any trouble. Lauren kept complaining, but our parents stayed silent. They knew they had no other choice. They could only wait for Grandma to arrive. When she showed up, she took them all to her house and restaurant in New York. Under Grandma's strict supervision, and with the help of her experienced employees, they all learned to work hard. At first, they struggled. They even shed some tears, struggling to keep up with Grandma's discipline. But slowly, They paid back the $185,000 that Lauren had spent. Grandma also took a portion of my parents' salaries to repay the expenses I had covered all this time. As for me, I finally moved into a cozy apartment closer to my job. I was finally living alone again, enjoying the quiet and freedom I had longed for. I didn't have to worry about anyone else's demands or complaints. One evening, as I stood on my balcony, watching the sun set over the city, I felt a deep sense of relief. I was finally free from the weight I had carried for so long. For the first time in a long while, I could breathe easily. But there was a tiny hint of loneliness, too. A small emptiness that lingered despite my relief. Just then, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen and hesitated when I saw Grandma's name. Taking a deep breath, I picked up. "Hello, Grandma." Her warm voice came through the line, filled with its usual strength. "How are you doing, dears?" I smiled a little. "Yes, I'm fine." "That's good," she said, her voice comforting. And at that moment, I knew I had made the right choices after all. "I wanted to talk to you about Lauren and your parents," Grandma said over the phone. "They're starting to change, especially Lauren. She's helping out a lot more with the work, and your parents are also beginning to reflect on things." She continued, "Angela, I know things have been really hard for you. I think I understand a little of how you feel. Family can feel like a heavy burden sometimes, but it's also something we should try to support. I hope that one day you'll be able to forgive them." I listened quietly, hearing both concern and determination in Grandma's voice. "There's no rush," she added. "Take your time and think it over. When you're ready." "I understand, Grandma," I replied softly. "I'll take my time and think about everything." After hanging up, I stood by the window, looking out at the city. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, and the city lights were beginning to flicker on as darkness covered the skyline. Inside, my emotions were mixed: anger, sadness, but also a tiny spark of hope. Returning to my room, my eyes landed on an old family photo. In it, Lauren and I, still young, smiled alongside our parents. I remembered the happy days we once shared and felt a pang of longing. If only things could go back to those times. But reality reminded me of how much things had changed. Weeks later, as time passed, my life settled into a steady routine. At work, I took on new responsibilities, leading a project. In my personal life, I felt more at peace. One evening, just as I was finishing up work, my phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. After a brief hesitation, I answered. "Hello, this is Angela." A soft, uncertain voice replied. "It's me, Lauren." I was surprised. "Lauren? What's going on? Did something happen?" She paused before replying. "I'm sorry for calling out of nowhere. Actually, I wanted to ask if we could meet in person. There are some things I'd like to talk about." Her voice sounded different, softer, more humble than I had ever heard before. I hesitated. "Why do you want to meet?" I asked quietly. Her voice, though shaky, was calm and sincere. "Big sis, I want to apologize from the bottom of my heart. Just saying it over the phone doesn't feel like enough. That's why I want to meet in person, to truly and sincerely say I'm sorry." Hearing the honesty in her voice, I stayed silent for a moment. "If it's too hard for you to meet me, I understand," Lauren continued. "I just want to respect how you feel." After a long pause, I finally replied, "All right, let's meet next Thursday at 4 p.m. at the cafe near the station." "Really? That makes me so happy." "Thank you, big sis," Lauren said, sounding relieved. I hung up the phone and took a deep breath, trying to clear my mind. I wasn't sure if meeting Lauren was the right choice, but deep down, I hoped it would lead to something good. When Thursday arrived, I got to the cafe earlier than planned. Sitting at a table, I felt nervous. My heart was racing, and time seemed to move so slowly. Finally, the cafe door opened, and Lauren walked in. She looked different. Her face had no makeup, her clothes were simple, and most of all, her eyes held a sincere look I had never seen before. She walked toward me slowly and started apologizing as soon as she sat down. "Big sis, I am truly, truly sorry," she said, her voice full of regret. At that moment, I could feel that something in her had changed. For a second, I didn't know how to respond. "Lauren," I began, but she kept talking, her voice trembling as she held back tears. "Working at Grandma's restaurant made me realize how much I relied on you," she said. "I took you for granted all these years. I finally understand how hard it has been for you, always putting us first and never thinking about yourself." Tears streamed down her face as she spoke. She kept apologizing, sharing how she had depended on me for so long without realizing the weight she had put on my shoulders. She even opened up about her relationship with our parents and the lessons she had learned while working with Grandma. I listened quietly, taking in everything she said. With each word, the anger and sadness I had held onto for so long began to fade. Her words brought a sense of relief I hadn't expected. When she finished, I took a deep breath and said, "Thank you, Lauren. I've taken your words to heart." After that, we spent hours catching up, talking about everything that had happened in our lives. It felt like an important step toward rebuilding our relationship. As we got ready to leave, Lauren handed me an envelope. Inside was money she had saved from working hard at Grandma's. "This is just the beginning," she said, looking me in the eyes. "I'll keep doing my best." Holding the envelope, I felt a warm sense of pride for the person Lauren was becoming. Months later, I visited Grandma's house again, where I finally reunited with my parents. They each apologized sincerely, and I could see that they, too, had changed, just like Lauren. That evening, we all sat together for a family meal, something that had once been rare. For the first time in a long time, it felt comforting, like we were finally a real family again. I felt the warmth of family around me once again. I knew I couldn't forgive everything right away, but seeing my family trying to change gave me hope for the future. As I got ready to leave, Grandma pulled me aside and shared some wise words. "Angela, you've grown strong, and that strength is important. But don't forget the kindness you still have in your heart. That's the most important thing." When Grandma hugged me, I couldn't hold back my emotions. Tears filled my eyes. At that moment, it felt like a new chapter with my family was finally beginning, and the heavy weight I had carried in my heart began to lift.